Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Drew Denning, a flannel-wearing content creator that goes by the handle Welcome to Boredom. He's also a sales rep for What's Game Manufacturing. Drew, welcome to the binge. How you doing, sir?
Doing mighty fine. And how about you, James? How are you doing?
Oh, I am doing great. As always, doing fantastic. Love talking with people across the industry. Definitely love talking with content creators because they come at this industry from a very unique angle. So thank you so much for your time. For those who don't know, we actually met at I think our paths have crossed kind of on social media over the past couple of years, but
Here and there.
officially we met at Essen, which is really cool. So we got a chance to have a smash burger together and in chat. And you came by our booth, which was very, very generous of you. And to me, it's like, wow, we got to get Drew on the podcast. Absolutely love your content. We're going to talk about that in today's episode. But first, let's start off with the history. I want the backstory. How did you get into board gaming?
So, how did I get into board gaming just in general? I played, the typical games growing up. I played Monopoly, Scrabble, all of those exciting childhood games that bring back either a weird thing of nostalgia or a thing of fear and hatred. Either way, what it was, you have those different emotions, and I just thought that's just all board games are. That's it. That was it. Monopoly being the pinnacle of it. That was it. That was until my freshman year in college,
Mm.
renting out an apartment, and my roommates and I were hanging out, and he said, "Hey, you want to play a board game?" And to my knowledge of it, like, oh, like Monopoly, and there he introduced me to, at the time, that was called Settlers of Catan. That's what I called it. That's what I call it. And that started a trend of at least 1 to 3 times a week playing Settlers of Catan. We played it so much. No game that I ever own or play will be as much as the time in college for those 4 years that I played Settlers of Catan. The amounts of trades, the amount of weird things that we did with that. And then finally, one day, we just said, let's try something different. Let's see what else is out there. Is there more stuff out there? And we began to research. There was Ticket to Ride. There was
Yeah.
Pandemic. There were so many others that were out there that we tried, and we just absolutely came together and loved. And
Now,
so
did,
I'm sorry. That's how that started. Go ahead with
I
your
was gonna
question.
say, did you get sick of Catan at all? I say Catan because I'm Canadian. I got this weird accent. Others say Catan. I think there's a huge debate over it. I think Eat Lunch Board Gaming is a podcast out there, and he asks this question every single time about how to pronounce it because he just gets a kick out of how 50% of the people call it Catan, the other 50% call it Catan. And at the time he asked me, and he's in the Catan camp, and I'm like, no, 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 it's Catan. So there's no right or wrong way to say it, I guess, unless you're Canadian, then
No.
it's Catan. But did you guys get sick of it at all? Like, was it one because when I played, like, we don't even play it anymore. Like, it is almost banned from the table because we played it to death, to the point where it got a bit ugly, right? So, were you ever in that camp or?
Let me put this into perspective, James. Let me put this into perspective here. 314 plays.
Oh, you logged it.
Logged it. I logged
Oh
it.
man,
I kept it in a little book and everything like that. Who won? What were some funny moments and memories of it, and things of that sort. So we had a great time with that because people get mad, and then that
yeah.
would cause the drama and tension with my roommates. But then we would make up and everything like that, and it'd be all good, and then we'd play again, and then we'd actually have a pretty good game where it was really easy and simple, and we stayed back and stayed away, and we were like, nope, nope, we're not going to go there this time. So, but it did get to the eventual point that we kind of asked the question, is there another one out there?
Yeah.
Since college, I've probably played it twice,
Yeah.
maybe, since then. But I've had, it's one of those games where it does have a special place for where it was, because it is the one that kind of started all of this and the fact that I found out that there's a whole industry where there's, thousands of games made per year. I think it was on average in 2021. I think I saw a statistic on Board Game Geek that said that there are on average 2 to 3 thousand board games published each year.
Oh
So
wow.
it's just like this is insane for
Yeah.
me to think about that. And so I didn't start the collecting, taking that seriously until about 2019, 2020. So about 5 years after I graduated college. And so that was that was it. That was so to answer your question and be straightforward. No, I did not get tired of it.
I
We just got adventurous. That's the
was
word.
gonna say 310 times, you'd be like lighting the board on fire at that point if it was in my household. But I still have it on my shelf. I just did a rearrange of my shelf this past week, and I moved it to a more prominent position. So I'm like, maybe I'm gonna pull it back out one of these days. We'll see. I don't know. It's a bit of a stretch, but we'll see. How far down the rabbit hole did you go then? So Ticket to Ride, Pandemic, obviously is kind of the next gateway games, and then at what point did you start going deep?
So I started to I started with Ticket to Ride, and Ticket to Ride was just fantastic. I had a love, like immediate love and passion for Ticket to Ride because of how much fun it wasn't that difficult. It wasn't as it had a lot of strategy to it, but it wasn't anything that was similar to what I experienced with Catan. A whole completely different experience. Pandemic, that was the first one that taught me, okay, we need to work together to actually get this done.
Yeah.
That was the very first thing that it taught me. And then knowing, lo and behold, I'll tell you this because it's a funny story. I had a game store called Nerdvana in Tennessee where I lived.
Oh wow.
And they did mostly retro video games and tabletop games. That was their biggest thing, were those two areas of that. Now, I didn't know that Pandemic was its own little thing. So I just bought this gigantic box that said Pandemic on it, didn't know that it said Legacy on it. Now, I'm in my last semester of college. I'm a broke college kid, and for whatever reason in my head, I said, you know what, $80 US dollars is not that bad. I should go ahead and just get it. And so we played Pandemic the way that we regularly play. And then I was like, well, what does this legacy mean? What is that? And that drove me into what a legacy game was. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. There was so much more giving out of that $80 than I expected.
Yeah.
So for me, I thought that that was absolutely crazy in that. From that point on, I really got more into like the party game type of thing where
Yeah.
I would get party games, social deduction games, things like that is what I did. But again, I didn't really start collecting more, getting more games until about 2020 when I was like, okay, well, they have a whole section and Target, whole section at they have all these hot commodity games at my local game store. I was like, I'm going to go figure what these are all about. And I remember the one that made me go, I need to go ahead and do it was actually Horrified. That was the game
Mm.
that got me to go, I need to go and collect more. And so, and it was just weird because I was in a weird headspace at that time. And so it was like, this is some good comfort that's cheaper than any therapy that I could get. But everybody listening, please go to therapy if you need it. Don't go down the rabbit hole I did. And but it actually worked out for the better, and I am happy with the hobby that I picked up and what it led to.
When did that transition into content creation? And was content creation something you're doing before board games, or did those two things kind of go hand in hand?
So, one of the things that what it was is my primary space and area where I am is on TikTok.
Yeah.
That was the thing. I was just throughout the pandemic, I would just be when I wasn't working, I'd come home, do chores, make something to eat, cook, have a good time with my spouse, and just have this wonderful time of it. And we would play board games, and I just would sit there and I would say, I see a lot of people on YouTube creating content about board games. And in 2021, I said, you know what? I'm just going to start doing this. I'm going to start making game recommendations where I would start recommending games that I've played and doing like a top 10 list of something. So I would do 10 videos in about a 2 week period, one video a day, where I would just start talking about games. These are games that I enjoyed that are social deduction games, games that I enjoyed that involve dice, games that I've enjoyed this or that. You fill in the blank of that.
Yeah.
The the first video that ever got traction was first series that got traction off of that was board games that make me feel uncomfortable. That was the very first one. And it was a very interesting list as I got to dive into that. I looked at games that I was like, these are banned and they make me uncomfortable when you realize what they are that are banned. They weren't games that I had they they one or two of them were games that I played, but the rest of them I was like, can't play these because they're banned. But I was like, for good reason though. You need to look into that. And so that was a very interesting topic, and that was where I first got my first several thousand views rolling in. And so it wasn't necessary. I wasn't creating any content before. I wasn't doing anything. I was just living life, working,
Yeah.
doing my day-to-day job of where I did both. I worked in the Amazon factory as well as I delivered caskets to funeral homes.
Oh wow.
So yeah, that's what I was doing before working with What's. We'll get into that later though. So
So board games a bit of a little bit of a levity, I guess, with a job like that,
yeah,
right?
yeah, the uncomfortable. And James, I'm sorry, I don't mean to make you feel uncomfortable with that subject, but that was the job that I had. It's what paid the bills,
Yeah.
and board games were kind of my escape, as a hobby, collecting them, buying them at whatever store I could or online somewhere, and then such as Miniature Market or any other ones, and then as well being able to come together and play them.
Yeah. Now you got me curious. So what were the top three games that made you uncomfortable?
Man, James, you're talking about something I did 2 years ago. So let me think back to that. Let
Give
me
me
think back.
one. How about that? Give me one.
Give you one. Okay. Um, one of the games that made me feel very uncomfortable was uh Twister.
Okay.
And so that's not technically a board game, but it is a game, and it's sold on the board game aisle. So I was like, this gets a pass. And so Twister just always made me feel uncomfortable. Like I like to like I'm a hugger type of person, but I'm
Yeah.
like, don't hug me too long.
Yeah.
I'm like, I will gladly accept hugs, handshakes. Hot. We can even make our own like handshake, whatever deal. But I'm like, don't hug me too long. Like then it gets a little weird. And
That's
so it's
awesome.
like,
It's that
so
extra, that
so
second squeeze when you're getting the hug. That's like, whoa, okay, come on now.
yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. Let's see. There was another one, and it was just really. Oh, it was a 1970s game. This was the one that was my number one. Uh, it was a game called Spin the Bottle. It was an actual
Okay, yeah.
board game, Spin the
Yes, I'm
Bottle,
familiar with this
and
one.
it
Yeah.
was it, yeah, it made me just very uncomfortable just looking at the picture alone on the front because it was a family
Oh, jeez.
together, and I was like, this is awful. I'm sorry, and I probably shouldn't talk too much about that on the show, but it was just anybody go look that up, look at that front box image and tell me that it doesn't make you uncomfortable in the slightest.
Oh, there's I can tell you two right now that more modern one. One is Trial by Trolley, which I had bought at a one of the most recent conventions is at Breakout Con in Toronto, and they have this kind of swap where you can come in and it's like a silent auction. And it was going for like nothing, and it was brand new, still with the shrink wrap on it. And I'm like, oh, I think I heard about that game, right? So I pick it up, and then I'm watching the how to play video, and some of the content in it, I felt uncomfortable, and I boxed it back up. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna find a new owner for this one. This is not my jam, right? So Cards
That's
Against
what
Humanity is another good example of that.
Oh yeah, 100%,
Yeah,
100%. And that's what, and I sit there and make fun of Cards Against Humanity a lot in my current content just because
yeah,
it's the game everybody went to, and I'm like, just because it's edgy and whatever you want to describe it as doesn't mean that it's good and as well.
And there's like a
I
million
yeah.
knockoffs of it, and I get the attraction, and certainly it's a popular game, so no disservice to them. It's just not my personal kind of
Hmm.
vibe. You know what I mean? If I was to pick a game to play, that's probably not on the top of the list, but certainly they've had a lot of success. So when you kind of start building out this channel, the TikTok, and start getting those kind of initial hits, was it was there like an aha moment that where you're just like, oh boy, I can actually take this pretty far, and you start to kind of hone in on what drives traffic and what doesn't, or is it more organic than that?
That's a great question because the lists were doing okay even after
Yeah.
that initial traction. That they were doing okay, but mm, I said I don't want to be known for just doing this. So I started to branch out and do skits, do overviews, do recommendations, even unboxings to a certain point. And I told myself, I said, I'm not going to limit myself to just doing lists and these simple recommendations, you know? And I said, I'm not a one trick pony. Like
Yeah.
I want to branch out and do see what works, see what sticks. And I where I really hit it off was with through the skits. The skits were simple. They were just sounds that I used for because I watch a lot of television and have watched a lot of movies over life.
Yeah.
And I'm just taking these sounds and I'm just making them into something where it's just something simple and quick and it's just simply me, either making something that's relatable to what it may be. Most of my jokes throughout the skits either involve me flipping a table, or like I said, making fun of Cards Against Humanity, and more power to him if you enjoyed those games. But I'm just saying, like that's the thing that gets people to go, oh, this is pretty funny. Now the flannel was never intentional. That's the one thing I have to let it be known. That was never intentional. But my first video that got 1 million views was me wearing a flannel, and someone said, it was this song, it was this parody song of a country song, and it was cold that day, so I'm wearing a flannel, and someone said, "This is who I thought would be singing this type of song," just because of the outfit and the way that I look and everything. And the video was interesting because I'm just sitting here goofing off on the internet. I don't really have too much of a purpose at that point in time, and then I get that, and I'm like, maybe I can take this
Yeah.
to somewhere. Maybe something can happen. I would like for something to happen.
That's awesome. That reminds me of the Office episode where Andy Bernard is Will Ferrell is the boss, right? And he's like, "You're the funny guy," and he's like, "This is who I am now," right? Because you get a
Yeah,
reaction. It's like that's now the identity you've just carved out.
it was, and the thing about doing content is you got to do 1,000 different things in order to find something that sticks.
Yeah.
And so that's my biggest thing that I've come to realize is that following is built that way based on uh, what you try. And there's a lot of things that I've done that I'm proud of content wise. Like I was like, oh, I did
Yeah.
this beautiful shot of a game. This game looked so good in this lighting, it was perfect, and nobody saw the video. And I'm just like, why?
Yeah.
Why did that happen? And then I post a skit that took me less than 5 minutes to record and do, and then everybody sees it. So it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I also think I'm doing it very well.
What's some advice you'd give to people who are trying to get into content creation? Like, what's something if you were to go back and kind of meet your earlier self from a few years ago? What's something you would say to say, hey, if you want to get started, you should. This is one of the things you should start doing.
So I really put it into two different realms of what it would be, and they go hand in hand. I feel like one being that if you're going to create content, you got to realize that you got to have fun with it. If you're not having fun with it, then you're just going to be miserable, and it's going to be a waste of your time.
Yeah.
And why would you not use that for something else, such as family or playing more board games or whatever that it might be. The second one being that ask yourself the question, what would you want to watch? as you're scrolling on TikTok or Instagram Reels, or if you're going through your YouTube videos, ask yourself, what's the one thing that you would see and you would say, "Oh, I really want to watch this," type of deal. I at times think, "Oh, well, I could do better in some areas myself with that kind of question," but it's still a question that I asked today, and that's why for example, my unboxing videos have evolved into what they are.
Yeah.
I got told at PAX Unplugged, which I just went to a few weeks ago, and they told me, they said, "I love your unboxing videos," and I was like, "Thank you so much." And they said, "It's great that you can start out the videos the way that you do." And I'm like, "Oh, that's what you're talking about." Okay, because what I do is, and so for anybody who's not seen any of my content, just to wrap it up quickly, um, what I do is now I've taken my unboxing videos and I have added whatever strange video I could add to the beginning of the video. So, for example, I posted one today, and it's this elderly lady, and she's staring straight at the camera, and she screams, "Grandma loves chocolate cake." She has a chocolate cake right there in front of her, and she just takes her hand, dips her hand into the chocolate cake, rubs it all over her face. And then the next scene right after that is just me looking very uncomfortable and just like, anyways, I have an unboxing I need to do today. So thank you for staying with me.
Where do
And
you
so,
get that content? Like, is it just you're just scraping it from TikTok itself and doing like stitches or?
yeah, so I'm doing some form of stitching. I do find the videos just because, sometimes my For You page can be super weird.
Yeah.
And so it's just how that rolls out is that I said, "Well, this is weird to me and makes me uncomfortable. So let me just, if I'm stopping to watch all of this, somebody else is going to stop." It's kind of like I don't want to say a bait and switch, but it is to an extent. That's what it is, because then they'll say, "Oh, well, Drew's up here. Let me see what
Mm.
he's got, recently in his package." And somebody, and the fact that people were like, "Yeah, I really love that," and they told me at PAX Unplugged, they said, they said, "Yeah, I really love those, but I can't. I feel like I can't watch them in public." And I'm like, "You're probably right. Okay." so so that made me kind of chuckle at that was one of the handful of things that I'm known for outside of flannels and talking about board games. So it's a really interesting aspect to that. Let me go ahead and say, like, if you're starting out doing content, don't be ashamed to know that failure can happen.
Will happen,
You
quite frankly, I'm thinking,
and
right?
it will
Yeah.
happen. It will happen. I feel like definitely it's something that is a trial and error type of deal. It is a lot of hard work,
Yeah.
but you definitely need to just take that courage and the next step to do it. Don't go as crazy as I did in the early days. And James, this is me letting you know how crazy that I am. I When I started out, I was given some very bad advice, and the bad advice is, "Oh yeah, Drew, if you really want to go viral quickly, if you want people to start following you and get that big following, you got to post 2 to 3 times a day."
Yeah.
And I said, "I can't." I said, "No, I can't do that." And then they like, "You need to do it." And so for about 2 years, I did that. My first like 2 years, I did that, and I finally said, "I need to slow it down."
Yeah.
I when I finally got to a point, I said, I just started slowing down, posting that about maybe about March of 2023, I think, is when it went down. So I really tell people, I'm like, make sure it's good quality stuff, but also like something you do want to watch, and don't burn yourself out as quickly. Because like I had to take 2 weeks off and say, I'm not posting anything
Oh
for
wow.
2 weeks. I was like, I and I was in. It was bliss. It was such a nice feeling. And then I came back, and I still post at least once a day. That's kind of my uh, regimen. Is like, all right, I need to get one thing out a day. So, and I was like, and some people are like, "That's even crazy." And hey, you know, it's whatever you feel to be right.
What's your account up to now? Like, what's your follower count on? I think it's around 9,000 on Instagram. What's your TikTok at?
It's almost to 20.
Almost at
Almost to
20.
20.
So
Yeah,
that's a high count. Like, have you monetized yet, or is that the next step, or where are you at in that regards?
I did monetize on all my platforms actually, but then all of a sudden TikTok switched over and I left the TikTok Creator Fund. It was not that beneficial.
Oh
It
wow.
was not. And I used to now this is not secret for anybody who's listening. It's going to be out there. There are some people who do game reviews and they do ask for some sort of
Yeah.
either commission or some sort of payment for their video. That exists. When I got my job at What's Games, I said I'm going to use something, and I used to charge like fair amounts. It's just like, hey, this
Yeah.
is how much time of my time it's going to take to create your video. This is how much I'm going to charge you, and it wasn't that much. It was probably it was 20 something bucks is what all I asked. I was just
Yeah.
like I'm not going to ask much out of anybody. So then I said once I get to something where I can do something in this industry to where I can actually, you know, make a good living in the board game industry, then that's when I'm like, I'm not going to ever charge for any of my reviews. I'm never going to charge for any videos, any content that I create. And that happened, and I kept to that promise. I said I'm not gonna do that because it's actually because of my content that I got the call from What's Games.
So how did that work? So they just saw your content and called you up and said, "Hey, we got a job for you," or can you walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So, I was going through and creating content, doing two things a day, working the Amazon factory, delivering caskets, somewhere around that time. And all of a sudden, um, one of my videos really goes viral on Instagram. I'm really going through a good stride on Instagram where people are watching my content and people are interacting and engaging with it. And then all of a sudden, I get a comment and then a DM, and then later on the next day, an email from somebody representative at What's Games. And I thought to myself, I said, okay. They were like, wow, it really looks like you like board games. Would you like a position with our company? And my first thought was, this is a scam. This
Yeah.
has got to be a scam. Nobody actually does this. I was like, unless they want me to like do an unboxing video or some sort of content about their game. Nobody really does this. I was like, this is crazy. And I began to dive into it. And I found somebody who worked for the company that I knew personally. And I contacted them and I asked them, I said, is this for real? Is this a real person that's contacting me? This is not a scam, is it? And they said, no, person's name is real. They're my supervisor. And if you join our team, they will be too as well. They were like, no, this company has paid me every month that I've worked here. So they
Wow.
were like, it's true, it's true. So I was like, okay, let's take a deep dive into it, and that's how that went forward. I joined up with the company. They hired me basically on the spot. It wasn't even an interview. It was more of a hey, let's sit down, get to know you, and then as well tell you what you'd be doing day to day. And I said, okay.
So what do you do day to day? Like, what's your role?
So most of my job is to really take care of anyone who's interested in working with As you mentioned and said, I'm the sales representative for What's Games. I work with the North American side of the world as well as European, but I can also work with other areas of the world
Hmm.
too, if need be. If somebody's really wanting to work with What's Games, I try to stay in those two areas of Europe and North America. So what I do is I create the interest within our company, see if anyone be interested in working with us, answer any questions that they may have, and things of that nature. I work with getting the quotations, helping any publisher or designer who wants a quotation to do that. I help send out our sample kits. There are just a plethora of things that I wear my many hats on.
Yeah.
And so I definitely 100% do enjoy this job, and very grateful for it. But and it is in sales, but it's the relationship that I get to build with publishers, the relationships I get to build with designers. If it wasn't for the fact that I work with this company and build relationships, I wouldn't be here on this wonderful podcast with you, James. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
that's how it works. So we would have passed one another once upon a time, but I wouldn't be in the spot where I am today if it wasn't for TikTok, Instagram, and all the social media sites combined with working with What's Game. So and just know I'm very thankful for it.
So what's the long-term plan? Like, have you kind of set a vision for yourself as to kind of where you're looking to go in the industry and how these things are all going to kind of mesh together?
Now, in now to tell you this is to just simply say, and I'm going to put it flat and straightforward. At the moment, no, I don't. At the moment, I don't. I've only been working with What's Games for 1 year. It's officially 1 year about 2 weeks ago. So a year and some change is really what it is. And my goal was to work out my first year, do my best to do what I can to stay at this job and in the industry to where I can work hard, gain trust, and stay with them for multiple years. And I feel like that's where I'm at the point of that. But, I'm not going to stand here and say on this podcast that, oh yes, I am What's Games die hard, I'm going to be here the rest of my life type of deal. When the other opportunities come and arise, I'm going to entertain the idea of maybe potentially doing that. But at the moment right now, I would say that because of the board game industry and because of the job that I have, my bills are paid, which is a lot better than working two jobs.
Yeah.
I'm not living lavishly by any means, but I'm not doing that. But I can rest my head easy at night knowing that What's Games has been paying me enough to live.
And you're doing something you love, which is
and that's the other thing too.
Not many people can say that, right?
No, yeah, absolutely. As a gamer, if you would have told me 4 or 5 years ago that this is what I would be doing and that I would love every waking moment of it, I would have never believed you. I would have said, no. I'm not a content creator. I'm not entertaining. I'm not, I was like, I'm not, and I would tell all these kind of things about it, but just the way that life has gone has been so interesting that just the simple fact that I picked up my phone and said, I'm going to start talking about a hobby that I really enjoy would lead to my bills are paid because of a hobby that I enjoy. Like, I'm just like, man, that is wild to me. So I do feel like this has been a wild ride and wild story.
Yeah.
So.
Dude, you've done so well for yourself, and I know you've got quite the following. I love your content. It makes me smile, and I'm sure there's many out there that can't wait to see what the next idea you come up with. Drew, I want to wish you all the best in this coming year. Hopefully I can see you at maybe Origins if you're going to be there. Hopefully we'll get a chance to connect, and we'll maybe have another beer and another smash burger and talk games, my friend.
I look forward to it. That's going to be awesome. I would love nothing more than to have that opportunity to hang out again with you, James, and hear about, what you're working on and what the future is for you. And so, because, man, y'all, I need y'all to understand, anybody listening, watching, whatever platform that you're on, I just need you to know that this guy right here has some huge ideas, and I am so excited for it. And I'm so excited to hear what's going to be going on and what's going to be happening. Because right before this recording, he was sharing a few with them on the down low, and I'm not going to share that. It's not my not my platform to tell anyone. But I'm just saying, this guy's the real deal. He has big ideas and big dreams with it, and I love it.
You're too kind, my friend. Anyway, my friend, we'll talk soon, eh? Stay tuned.
All right, sounds good.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Ciao. This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.